This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
If you want to get people going, and I'm talking really get people going, start talking about significant amounts of public funding for privately owned endeavors, privately owned earners, privately owned professional sports franchises. That's exactly where we're going in this special episode of Real Talk in partnership with Alberta Views Magazine as we ask the question based on their current issue around healthcare and civic funding and municipal and provincial politics and everything else. Should the public pay for Calgary's new arena? You can read it online right now at albertaviews.ca, and in just a second we're going to get to the participants in this debate. The president and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce will join us. We've also got a volunteer with Project Calgary who happens to be the former president of the Beltline Neighborhoods Association. That's Peter Oliver and Deborah Yedlin coming up in just a second. The audience for this show, we know, will be healthy across the province and across the country. If you're living in Alberta right now or thinking of moving to Alberta and you're keen on a career in real estate, I want to let you know that Rello is Alberta's top online real estate school, and you can learn more about what they do online at rello.ca. That's RELO.ca, where better real estate training starts. You might say, well, that's a pretty bold claim. There's options out there. They're just automatically Alberta's top online real estate school. Yeah, actually, they are. And the proof is in the pudding. You can see why by checking out their website, choosing your course, and understanding how you get the best of both worlds when you qualify for your real estate license, get those pre-licensing courses out of the way, all working with the experienced and savvy instructors that Rello calls home. You can expect value. They've added a whole bunch of extras to every course that they offer. The tools continue once you launch your career, and we want you to save a couple of $100. So remember, when you're signing up for either the Alberta Residential or the Alberta Commercial Real Estate Bundle, the promo code Ryan100, all one word, is going to knock $100 off that course. That's Ryan100 when you get started today at rello.ca. Well, Calgary's new arena district has been debated for years now under different civic mayors, under different Alberta premiers, under varying circumstances with different looking deals. The fact of the matter is the Stampede City is getting set to see that project go ahead, but the debate on how it should be funded rages on, including in the pages of Alberta Views Magazine. They ask, should the public pay for Calgary's new arena? Deborah Yedlin agreed to argue yes as the president and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and it's a real pleasure to welcome her and her colleague on this project, Peter Oliver, to the show. Deborah, the general argument, if you've got the elevator pitch with somebody, you've got somebody for 30 seconds and you're keen to convince them on why public dollars should go to this project, what's that elevator pitch?
The elevator pitch is this is a city that believes in itself, and by investing in infrastructure that is going to last for 35, 40 years, it is sending a signal that this is a city that's looking forward and not looking behind.
Okay. Peter Oliver, and we'll dig into that in just a little bit. Project Calgary volunteer, former president of the Beltline Neighborhoods Association, and a well-known radio personality in the city of Calgary. Did you automatically know that you were a no to this? Was this a quick answer? Can you argue no in that same time frame that Deborah just did?
I think Calgarians know that it's not our responsibility as the public to fund private businesses to supersize the profits of the ultra wealthy and the ultra elite in this city. And we know that this was an opaque process that was deliberately designed to cut the public out of the process and remove the scrutiny of the public eye to form a one-sided deal which favored the billionaire owners of the Flames and really shafted the public.
Why do you think that was the case? Why do you think that it was? I mean, you're alleging that it was kind of a strategic, intentional decision that politicians, even for their part, agreed to squeeze the public out, which can be risky business. How did you see that playing out? Where did you see that?
Well, we know that that it's not been a popular platform to subsidize the elite. We saw in previous elections with Mayor Nenshi when he ran against Bill Smith on a campaign, head to head with the Flames owners who were fighting for more public dollars. He won handily. Jeff Davison ran a few years ago and placed a distant third on having formed and spearheaded the last and even larger public subsidy for the Flames. And then even in the last provincial election, we saw the province gamble significant amount of public money on a new arena for the Flames. And we saw a majority of NDP MLAs elected in Calgary, I think in response to that and a number of things. It's not popular. And I mean, you can just go back to a very, I think, important read for anyone who's looking to find out more about this. Power Play by Jay Shear, David Mills, Linda Sloan McCulloch really dives into what happened in Edmonton with Rogers Place and how there's really a sports franchise owner's playbook that they use to obscure the process, obscure the transaction, and pitch this idea of subsidizing their private businesses around this idea of civic boosterism and being a world-class city, which is sort of this thing that they kind of try to control. And it's really not, I think, upfront or direct, and really leads to some unfavorable outcomes for the public.
Deborah, we'll talk about the personal angle here and how I think pro sports franchises resonate with a large portion of the general public, and how owners of franchises do oftentimes strategically torque that emotional connection to the teams to achieve the business outcomes they need. But Peter references the Edmonton arena deal, or as they call it here in Edmonton, the agreement. I think you can make a pretty compelling argument that it's worked out well. But obviously, I'm sure that this is something you took a look at as you were preparing your argument to suggest that maybe Calgary should make public funds available as well. What did we learn from your perspective from how the Edmonton Arena agreement played out over the past 10 years or so?
Well, I think, as someone who grew up in Edmonton, seeing the activity and how the arena has activated not just the development of a hotel, but also the whole area around it. It's very exciting. And we know that Edmonton has struggled from a downtown perspective for quite a while. And the way the whole area of the city in and around the arena has come to life is astonishing, actually. And so when you think about that and what's possible here, I mean, every deal, everybody's going to look at every deal and say, we're not happy with this, we're not happy with that. But I think in the end, this is something absolutely, just like the Coliseum had to be replaced because it was definitely beyond its past its best by date. The same thing is true for the Saddle Dome. And if we want to retain that sports franchise attraction, which also puts us on the map across North America for other reasons as well, you have to renew infrastructure. Nothing lasts forever. And that's just the reality. We're seeing it across the board, whether it's arenas, whether it's water pipes. There's something about renewing infrastructure that we have to do. And in this case, this is important for Calgary. We're looking to continue to attract talent, attract businesses, to diversify the economy. We're looking for a younger population. And generally speaking, that younger population comes from away where they're used to seeing a lot of activity in terms of what they can do with their discretionary expenditures. And so this, from this perspective, it makes sense. And I think the other thing to think about is that this is the arena, the event center. Actually, this is not just about an arena. This is about an event center. And Peter knows very well that for the most part, the area where the arena will be going, as well as the event center the whole area being redeveloped, hasn't actually been activated as a tax base because of the fact that, Stampede takes place 10 days a year. People come to the area for events, maybe, for hockey games, but there's just a lack, there's no reason to go there otherwise. And so the whole idea is to build residential housing, to have a lot of restaurants and retail, So it becomes another district in Calgary, and it's tied to the downtown strategy in terms of activating the arts district as well. So this sort of completes what's been going on in Calgary for the last 10 years in a vision in that context.
Peter, are you compelled by that? Like I look at Edmonton, and we're talking to you basically from Ice District right now, from the historic Mercer warehouse in Ice District, and I look across the street at the rink. I look at the towers. I look at the residential activity that's happened. Deborah invokes talking about the tax base, which is a thing, and that's something that I know that city councils are looking at for revenues on how to increase, in particular, tax revenues out of the core. Are you not compelled by what you see in Edmonton? Like, are you legitimately convinced that was a bad deal for Edmontonians?
So the deal in Edmonton and the deal in Calgary are not identical. They weren't identical cities. I will say, though, that the arena hasn't quite been a catalyst for redevelopment in Edmonton. We'll talk about that a little bit. You do see new buildings there, but they were largely a part of the original deals to develop the arena, like the offices of Stantec were moved, the developer for the arena, were moved into the area. A large number of government of Alberta offices were moved into there in a long-term lease. And so what you actually saw was not net new tax base, but a relocation of tax base from one part of the downtown to another. And boosters for the arena for Calgary have talked about how that an arena, a new arena, is a catalyst, would be a catalyst for redevelopment in East Victoria Park, which is the culture and entertainment district. And in fact, that's not what we've seen in Edmonton, and where we have vacant surface parking lots, which were supposed to be redeveloped as part of the agreement, the project, and this new boost to the area. City Council there has had to extend those surface parking lot permits 8 years after the arena opened. So really, it's just kind of a shell game of moving money around. In Calgary, we've had a $1 billion BMO Center expansion. We have now the second promise, or the second time we've had an arena agreement to build a new arena. And yet there has been only one yet to be named hotel development next to the BMO Center named, and no new redevelopment in the area. And if you just look across McLeod Trail to the west side of the Beltline, you'll see cranes everywhere. Redevelopment is happening. And it's happening because it's a desirable place to live, because we're investing in parks, we're investing in active modes transportation, there's affordable places to live. And that's really what encourages development. And that was what was in the original Rivers District Master Plan, which is sort of the superseding document of all of this, the piece of the downtown strategy that looks at this area in particular. And so when you're looking at that limited amount of public dollars, and we're looking at the priorities of the city, like the Green Line and affordable housing, how on earth does it make sense to pay for 97% of a new arena that might not actually return anything to the area? And we never actually saw a business case looking at the different alternatives and weighing the options. And I'd like to comment on something Deborah mentioned too about the arena being beyond its best before date. So there's never actually been a study looking at renovating or maintaining the Saddle Dome for another 50 years. Certainly, there's no reports that say that the Saddle Dome is not salvageable. Much of the mechanical systems were replaced after the 2013 flood. The maintenance issues that have been noted have been reported as superficial, as I point out in this piece. And so there was never actually a proper debate or investigation into whether or not the existing Saddle Dome could serve its purpose for another 50 years.
Deborah, Sorry, Peter, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do want to get Deborah to touch on that one point, because I do think, like, let's be honest, this is a tale of two cities. I don't mean to keep dragging Edmonton into the conversation about Calgary, but I do think there's some relevance. One of the big differences, and I mean, I'm a born and raised Calgary kid. I've been in the Saddle Dome 100 times, more than that, obviously. And Edmonton, I mean, like, respectfully to the area around Wayne Gretzky Drive and 118th Avenue. Respectfully, it was a dump. It is a dump. I don't mean to insult people that work and live in that area, but there hasn't been investment, private, public, or otherwise, in that area, minus some public transportation infrastructure for years, maybe the convention center, but nobody's opening new restaurants there. Nobody's opening new hotels there. Nobody wants to walk around there after games if they don't want to get stabbed. I'm sorry, but it's true. And in Calgary, it's a little bit different. Like, the Saddle Dome is in some pretty plum property on the Stampede grounds. Is there a more compelling argument? Like, nobody took it seriously. Conversation in Edmonton around spending, I think it was 240 million renovating the Coliseum. Nobody took it seriously because nobody shared the conviction that it should be there. Is Calgary a completely different animal? Do Calgarians deserve a more fulsome conversation about renovating the Saddle Dome, Deborah?
That makes absolutely no sense. Anybody who has toured the Saddle Dome and seen exactly what the guts look like will say it's a miracle that it's as functional it is, because it is a very busy arena, because we have we have the Flames, we have lacrosse, we have two minor league teams. It is a very busy facility. But having said that, if you go into the guts of the building itself, it is not exactly state of the art in any way, shape, or form. It is extremely difficult to repurpose when you're having other events other than a hockey game or another sporting event. There are not enough loading docks. In fact, when you do have a playoff game, and if there are a lot of AV trucks out, broadcasting trucks out, they have to use the washrooms inside the Saddle Dome. They can't actually hook things up outside the Saddle Dome. There are so many logistical issues with with the building itself, plus the fact that it cannot, or it's hard for it to accommodate big concerts of today, because the roof can't handle all the stuff that has to be hung from the rafters. And so what has to happen is they need engineering reports with the actual load to make sure that they can actually hold any number of concerts. This is called transactional friction. It means you actually miss out on events because people say, well, we've got all this equipment and we can't actually put it to use in the Saddle Dome. So we'll pass and we'll go somewhere else. And finally, there is only one way to get into the Saddle Dome at this point that is accessible for people with mobility issues. That's a problem. It needs to be more accessible. The elevator systems are, we know that Gary Bettman got stuck in one elevator when he was here. That
was probably on purpose.
Yeah, well, I can't opine on that, but all I can say is it is a facility that has been well used. It would not the financial cost to renovating it. I don't even want to think about what that would be, and it actually would not generate the return that this new facility will, because it's incorporated into the entire plan of the Rivers District itself. So I think this is, people have said that. Go into the Saddle Dome, have a tour, see how it's put together, and you'll be amazed that it does what it does already.
Peter, it does kind of give that vibe. I mean, obviously, if you're talking about a renovation budget in the hundreds of millions, I'm sure they could transform it, but it does give the vibe of an arena that was open 50 years ago, and
so
I was just going to say, I recognize, and there's some comments in our live chat here about how as humans, we tend to really love and long for big, shiny things. And I recognize that. And to a certain degree, I think it's insane that we blow up buildings that are 30 and 40 years old. But I also acknowledge, like, if you see the Saddle Dome, or you walk around the Saddle Dome, and then you walk around Rogers Place in Edmonton, or you walk around the new arena in Seattle or somewhere else, like, you can't even compare it. Is that something that should be important, do you think, to citizenry of a city?
So I think it's
pride. I just want to say that. I mean, to have something like that is a point of pride in a city. I'll just part that.
And I would point out that the Saddle Dome is an iconic and cherished piece on our landscape, and very much woven into Calgary's, I think, identity. And I think how the ownership of the Flames have used it to try to describe it as some sort of embarrassment for the city is really underhanded and disingenuous. So just to go back, I think it's important to point out that Deb mentioned there actually wasn't a report or an investigation into whether or not or what it would cost to maintain the Saddle Dome. And I think if we're making billion-dollar decisions with public money as a city, we shouldn't be basing those on vibes. And so I'll just finish here. One thing when we talk about the operations of the facilities, it's been pointed out over and over again that big tours, the challenges of working within the older Saddle Dome. Fair enough. Project Calgary, the organization that I'm part of, took a look at all the shows that were booked at Rogers Place, the Saddle Dome in Calgary, and Rogers Arena in Vancouver since 2023. And what we found was that the number of shows at Rogers Place in Edmonton and the Saddle Dome was virtually identical, booking all the way into 2025. We're talking circuses, we're talking Stars on Ice, we're talking concerts, comedy shows, wrestling, all of this stuff. All of that, all of the arguments aside about how the Saddle Dome is a more difficult arena to operate within, sure. But at the end of the day, it shakes out that the Saddle Dome is getting the exact same number of shows as this shiny new billion-dollar, whatever it was in Edmonton arena. And so the business case for this, while maybe that made sense pre-pandemic, the touring world has changed. The big concerts, the Taylor Swifts, they're not doing arena tours anymore. They're doing major stadium tours. They're doing Vegas residencies. They're playing the Sphere. They're doing Cineplex shows. And so really the world we're in today doesn't really necessitate a new arena simply for major tour acts. It's just they won't come here because we have a new arena. And I'd just like to lastly point out that there is a difference between Calgary and Edmonton. This new arena is going to be 2 blocks from our existing one, right? So location-wise, they're in the exact same area. The new arena is slated to have actually less seats than the existing Saddle Dome. And so we're building something really that's just designed to generate more operating revenue for the Flames owners. And that's really at the core of what this arena is about, is making the ultra rich richer.
Just a quick point of interest. Edmonton's arena build was $483 million, so I think that's pretty remarkable considering what some of these other projects. Seattle's was $1 billion plus. Deborah, Peter makes a very fair point about the power that ownership wields, and we've got a bunch of people in our live chat right now on YouTube saying, the devil's in the details. Erica says if Calgary came out of this with the city owning the arena, it would be a completely different circumstance. Can you talk about the dynamic of Flames ownership, Murray Edwards, the power maybe that they had over city council, the fact that there was a deal done and then it evaporated? Then for the benefit of our podcast audience, you're kind of wincing as I'm leading into this question. I don't think you like the question very much, but I'll hand you the conch in just a second. But essentially, there's that threat. Daryl Cates did it in Edmonton too. Maybe I'll just have to move the team. And ultimately, he got what he wanted. Is that what happened in Calgary? I mean, can we acknowledge Calgarians didn't get the best deal that was on the table?
Calgarians got a good deal for the plan that was put forward to make sure that this fit into the Rivers District. And I just want to point out that the City of Calgary is contributing $537 million. It's 56% of the cost. And the Flames are providing $40 million up front, and then they have a lease with that they paid for 35 years. And so you have a steady stream of cash flow. You have, the city owns the building, they own the land. And it's the same deal as it is in Edmonton in terms of the ticket revenues and the operating costs and the maintenance. So I think we have to realize that the deals themselves are not that different. What I do think is that, just to go back to a couple of things, first of all, the Seattle Arena was rebuilt and it cost over $1 billion or more. So renovating.
It was 100% privately funded. I might insert.
You're absolutely right. Different tax base, different kind of pockets in Seattle. I'm going to point out, with being the tech capital of
Murray Edwards might be one of the richest people in Canada.
I'm not going to opine on Murray Edwards' wealth. That's not my business here. My business is to say that this is important for the city. And I also want to say, you made a point about Edmonton and the tax base actually not being activated. I think Edmonton's had challenges ever since West Edmonton Wall.
100%.
Everything got sucked out to the west side of the city, and it has struggled downtown ever since. And so when I look at Edmonton today, I say that there's a lot going on that's positive in spite of that. And it's been a long time coming. We're talking late 70s. Okay. Now, the LRT construction that caused other problems downtown, that's another conversation. COVID's another conversation. The drop in oil prices is a conversation, but it's a very different city. For Calgary, we have a very business-minded city. We want to make sure that we continue to grow and attract that talent, and it expects those being able to have places to go and be together as community. I take your points that you don't see it as being as important, and that's everybody's got their own perspective. From a concert perspective, people actually pass Alberta altogether because they can only go to Edmonton. I seem to recall that Paul McCartney did play in Edmonton, didn't come to Calgary. The sound is lousy, and that's why, among other things. And so, we all miss out. So net, I think it's important to think about this as an Alberta benefit, not just a Calgary benefit in terms of what it could detract, because events can go to both cities as opposed to just one.
You can check out the work, by the way, that we're talking to. If you're just tuning in on the live streaming, Miss Aradia, presented by California Closets. We're talking to, that's Deborah Yedlin, President and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. Peter Oliver, our guest as well from Project Calgary. He's a volunteer there. You can check out the work they do at projectcalgary.org. Peter, your team's done a lot of reporting and opinion pieces on the Green Line, and obviously transit access and transit involvement in this integration, I should say, into this project is significant. A lot of people are hearing a lot about the Green Line. That's a big part of where the province's dollars are going here, but the Green Line is not without its issues either. I mean, we've covered on this show in depth how the province is kind of taking over that project from Calgary City Council, and there's a lot happening there. How does the Green Line factor into this, including some of the talk about where some of these hundreds of millions of dollars some people would prefer to see that going?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I think where the Green Line factors in is the opportunity cost here. So the city has limited public funds to work with, and we have certain priorities. And when we talk about a world-class city, which is just being beat to death, I like to think of a quote by the former mayor of Bogota, now the president, Gustavo Petro. A developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use public transportation. And the Green Line is a project that was set to address this issue in Calgary, where public transportation has really been an afterthought in this city. And instead of moving ahead with the north part of the line, instead of moving ahead with the south part of the line, we're moving ahead with an arena for billionaires. And we might have had more money to put towards the Green Line had we not made this silly mistake. So Deb talked a little bit about the breakdown in who's funding the arena, the financing. Calgarians are funding 97% of the upfront cost. That money that the Flames are putting in is not lease payments, it's loan repayments. So we're loaning them $316 million in addition to the $537 million we're putting in just as our share. And so when we're talking about a new arena, maybe there is a debate to be had about putting in some public funds. But why is it that we are putting in 97% of the upfront cost of the arena, but receiving 0% of the revenue? And this is all about socializing the costs and privatizing the profits. And an arena this arena is set to be publicly owned, but owning an arena is actually not in the public interest. It's a depreciating asset. It's like a car. At the end of the 35 years, just like the Saddle Dome, it's going to be worth nothing. And so the Flames get to use this asset, suck 100% of the revenues out of it, and then walk away from it from the end, and maybe even walk away from Calgary, because if we don't build them a new arena in 2050 or 2060. So things like public transit, parks, I mean, Project Calgary spends a lot of time fighting for public goods. The Southwest BRT, and affordable housing, and main streets and active modes infrastructure. These are things that really do make a city. These are public goods. And so it's really frustrating as someone who is an advocate for these things, who fights alongside communities, to see our public money, our tax dollars go towards public goods. Seeing these born again fiscal conservatives on council, open the safe for Marie Edwards and co. and the Flames owners and billionaires, but then talk about tightening our belts when it comes to the Green Line or investing in Calgarians. And I think it's really disheartening, and I think it's really sad.
I respect that point, Peter. Deborah, before we thank both of you for your time, I want to give you a fair opportunity to respond to what Peter just argued.
Okay, so what I wanted to say was, there are community areas that are part of the development of the arena and the events, the Rivers District. So it's not just about an arena, and I think that's the issue that we keep on coming back to. This is about activating the entire area. There are parcels of land that are privately owned. There are others that are going to be sold. And if you think about, everybody knows that nobody's making any more land. So over the time of the lease, we know that value of the land is going to go up. We know that there's going to be an activated tax base. We know that that's something that we've needed to have happen in Calgary for a long time. We need to keep growing. We need to keep sort of activating and putting in place opportunities to increase the tax base. So I think that's really, really important. And so when we look at it from a broad context, as far as the allocation of resources, everybody's constrained. It's true. And I would argue that when the city decided to commit the dollars, they were also relying on a promise from the province that they would be supporting the Green Line the way they had indicated. Now that's changed, and so we're looking at a different set of circumstances today. But at that point, there was no reason to doubt that they would not be there for the Green Line. I'm going to agree with Peter. We do need to have a strong public transportation infrastructure, critical, but also access and egress to that area has been a challenge for a very long time. And so the money that the province has kicked in has not been for the arena deal itself, but to improve the infrastructure and in and around the area so that people can get in and out more effectively than they have been for decades. So there is a lot to be excited about, and obviously we're going to wait and see how everything comes together as the construction has started. And it's an exciting time for Calgary. We're investing in ourselves. That's really important.
I want to just say how much I appreciate both of you making your time available, making your perspectives available. I know that this is a debate where I don't know if anybody's minds get changed through debates like this. Some people stand very firmly in their own camp, and I totally get that. But we love when two folks or more will show up here and really dig into an issue and maybe even take a few risks with their takes publicly. Not everybody's willing to do that. So Deborah Yedlin, President and CEO of the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, Peter Oliver, former President of the Beltline Neighborhoods Association, a well-known radio personality in Calgary and a volunteer with Project Calgary. Thank you both for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You bet. Both Deborah and Peter get into this at length in the current issue of Alberta Views magazine. You can read it online at albertaviews.ca. I love how they do this dialogue feature every single issue. They take a hot button topic like this. They get two folks, credible perspectives to make their argument. Then each of them gets to read the other's argument, and then they both respond. And it's a job that's really well done. Well, while you can read it online at albertaviews.ca, we encourage you to subscribe to the magazine for engaged citizens. Support their independent, long-form journalism, and you can do it with the promo code AVRJ. That's Alberta Views Ryan Jespersen, AVRJ, 50% off the investment in an annual subscription, which means you're going to get 10 issues to your door for $20. So come on, let's forego a couple of caramel macchiatos, John. Forego a couple pumpkin spice lattes.
I don't drink that crap anyways. I got lots of money for this.
Sign up at
This is a great deal.
.ca. We have a ton of action going on in the Real Talk YouTube live chat.
God.
I want to get to this because I know that everybody's coming at this from different perspectives. Many of you are making very compelling points, so that's coming up in just a quick second. But it is Wednesday, and for an audience across the country, I know that you've got some interest in what's happening in beautiful Jasper National Park right now. This is one of the most remarkable times to get out to the mountains and to go visit Jasper because they have their annual Dark Sky Festival happening, John, and we are heading into the second weekend of that Jasper Dark Sky Festival. So I want to make sure that you are up to speed on some of the opportunities that are out there, opportunities to experience nature in a way that you really can't anywhere else. This is the largest accessible dark sky preserve in the country, one of the largest in the entire world. There is nothing like the Jasper Dark Sky Festival. There's a few things that we want to make sure, specific events that are going on. Alan Nursall is going to be out there this weekend. You can find the details at jasperdarksky.travel. But Alan is obviously a charismatic Canadian television personality, one of the smartest guys you'll ever hang out with. This is an evening filled with curiosity and competition at their After Dark Trivia Night at the Jasper Legion. I have had so much fun in past at the Jasper Legion.
What Legion isn't hopping?
You know what? And they are. You
but
better,
especially
you better
Jasper.
come correct. You're not allowed to wear a baseball cap in there. You got to take your cap off. I love it, and it is always so much fun. This is an opportunity to team up in groups of 2 or 4 for thrilling science and space trivia challenges. It's so much fun. A perfect blend of entertainment and intellect. That's coming up this weekend. I also wanted to mention Nerd Night. Nerd is the new cool, obviously, and if you are a dark sky lover and you are ready to get your nerd on, they've got you covered with an amazing lineup of 3 dynamic speakers that are going to tip you upside down, rocket you out to space, and take you on a dark night adventure, all from the comfort of your bar stool. This is at the Dead Dog Bar and Grill, which is one of the funnest spots in Jasper, to be sure. That's coming up this weekend as well. You can find the details. That's October 25th. That's Friday from 7 to 11. And one other one that I wanted to make sure that you knew about, an opportunity to gaze at the stars with the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. This is a free event. It's open to everybody. It's family friendly, and the astronomers from they call it the RASC, the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. They guide you basically through the universe with their telescopes. So cool. So you're going to check out the moon's craggy surface. You're going to marvel at distant nebulas, explore galaxies far beyond our own. This is a celestial spectacle that you do not want to miss. Again, that's without charge, free for the whole family. It's this weekend. You can find the details at jasperdarksky.travel. If you do find yourself out in Jasper, lucky enough to be taking in the Dark Sky Festival, and you're posting photos, especially on Instagram, make sure you tag us, Real Talk RJ, and MyJasper. That's the hashtag to use. We would love to feature your memories in a future episode of MyJasper Memories, presented by our wonderful friends at Tourism Jasper. So did you come into this conversation with Deborah and Peter with a strong opinion on whether or not public money should go to a private entity like the Calgary Flames or an arena build like this? And if so, did your mind change? What was your journey like listening to those two?
Well, I was kind of in the middle, and I have to disagree with you, Ryan. I know usually I just tip my hat, but you said at the end of the interview, I don't know if any minds were changed. I think mine was. I think Peter was very well versed in his arguments against the new arena, but at the same time, you've been to the Saddle Dome. I've been to the Saddle Dome in the last 2 years. The outside, I agree. It's not that bad. It could use some fresh coats of paint, some LED walls, some other things that could help it out that Rogers Place has here. But when you go inside, when you go in the bathrooms, when you go in the corridors, when you're looking for parking around there, you really start to see how this building has come of age. It's It's at the end of its life. So I don't know what the answer is here, because I did agree with a lot of the points Peter made, but the Calgary Flames need a new home regardless. That's got to happen. So.
Yeah. And like the word need is an interesting one too.
Well, they've got to play somewhere. They're a big moneymaker for the city.
For sure they
and
are.
And billionaires alike. I will say that a lot of money goes into people's pockets, owners, players, whatever.
That's how the world works.
But at the same time, it's generating income for a city. That's what every sports team does.
Yeah, and it is kind of like I think it's maybe an indictment on all of us, maybe that we do get sick and tired and intolerant of buildings once we see shinier buildings in other cities. I think Deborah was correct to talk about it as a point of civic pride. Nobody wants it to be a white elephant, but I do think that in Edmonton, and I'm about to compare two things that are completely different, so don't read too much into it, but I'm just saying two of the big skyline improvements in Edmonton have been the new arena, which Edmontonians I think are pretty proud of, pretty excited about, and the Walterdale Bridge.
Sure.
Very different projects, funded very differently. Obviously, the public uses the bridge more than the public uses the arena.
And I would argue,
but I'm just saying, like when you get that new bridge, when you get that new arena, when you get that beautiful new park, it does something for the psyche of the city.
The vibe, like you were saying, I come from South Side to Edmonton every day, and when I go over that bridge, it's just a feeling of, hey, I'm in the mix, I'm downtown, I'm part of this city, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing I will say is number 3 there, like you talk about the skyline, also all the towers that went up around it is number 3, and those just make our city. Everyone always, Edmonton, there's no skyline. Now look at it, right? It looks like a bustling downtown community. Right?
Yeah, I want to. I mean, there's been a lot of good points here, and I want to get to these. I did a
ton in the chat.
I like Peter. I like kind of what Peter is putting out there today. Whatever. I'm not here to argue with him, but I did. He said something about public infrastructure. We shouldn't be making these decisions based on vibes, and I kind of went, I'm not really sure. I think
Isn't that what life's about?
Investment in public parks is a vibe investment.
100%.
Talking about safety on transit, that is all about vibes.
Parks don't make
right?
money, but they make people feel good.
I'm not talking about like Tommy Chong vibes behind the wheel of the Ford LTD blowing smoke. I'm just talking about like people, vibes are relevant. There are some excellent points in here. Travis says, if owners want a shiny new building, fine, then pay for it. Like what other business gets subsidized like this when we want something new? Fair point. By the way, Murray Edwards' net worth, according to the internet, take it for what it's worth. I haven't seen his books, but he's worth an estimated $3.3 billion. So there you go. I think that's relevant. Dwayne has been, and Dwayne, don't think we don't see you, buddy. I see you posting the same question in the chat 3 or 4 times, and I wanted to get to it because it's a good point. He says, Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, is supposed to be asked, or should be asked, why she is supporting the new hockey arena for Calgary when she originally opposed it when she was the leader of the Wild Rose Party and continuing on as a radio talk show host. Dwayne's not wrong. Check this out. Here's reporting on the Globe and Mail. This is Alan Mackey. I used to work with Alan way back in the read Alan's work in the Calgary Herald for years. Josh Wingrove and Don Walton back in 2012 filing their stories at a Sherwood Park, Edmonton, and Calgary, quoting Danielle Smith making a campaign speech in March. Just before she lost that 2012 election. You might call that the Lake of Fire election. Remember, Danielle Smith was trending. And again, hey, this is a reminder as well that sometimes political polling and trending doesn't play out the way everybody thinks it's going to. But Danielle Smith was inherently, she was like waiting to be the Premier of Alberta. Do you remember that? Like the Wild Rose Party was trending up. Everything was going great. Danielle Smith says in 2012, the Edmonton Oilers should not expect provincial funding for a controversial and costly new downtown arena if Wild Rose Party is elected in Alberta. So said Danielle Smith. If she became Premier on April 23rd, again, we're talking about 12 years ago, she said her party would gamble on hockey lotteries instead for the Oilers and the Flames as a way of generating millions of dollars each year for those NHL franchises. Quote, we would not provide funding to a new arena in Edmonton, but we would be open to working with teams to develop a branded lottery. Edmonton Oilers then president Patrick Laforge, what a beauty, was caught off guard, said, this is the first I've heard of it. I really have no comment. That was 12 years ago.
Well, she's enjoying the playoff games now and the events with Tucker Carlson and all the stuff going on inside Rogers Place. One more point I'll make is I've been looking a lot into this, and Seattle's on the brink of this. Parts of their arena are what you call modular, so they're able to be upgraded 30, 40, 50 years from now. The way they have the solar and all that stuff, if solar becomes something else, they can remove panels and get a new form of power. And this modular, you've seen modular homes being built now where like they're pieced together, and then as pieces need to be upgraded, they can take a certain piece of the home off and add whatever on. I think that in the future is really going to upscale and make these arenas better. Because the biggest point Peter had, and when he said it, I'm like, man, he's so right, is they aren't timeless. You buy this thing, you pay millions, billions of dollars for it, and the people know who are making the money that in 30, 40 years, it's just a big piece of concrete that's worth shit.
But there's not a lot of politicians that are thinking beyond the next election cycle.
Of course they are. They're going to be dead.
We've had...
Not the election cycle. In 30, 40 years, they're going to be gone.
But it's not their issue in 40 years.
Exactly.
And I recognize that you want... And I'm not saying that gets them off the hook for making smart decisions. Like, we've had how many city planners, and I can think of coverage we've done around... I mean, here's another hot... 15-minute cities, 15-minute communities and districts. We've had conversation about that. And you talk to city planners, and you talk about city plans, and cities do need to think ahead 50
100%.
and 100 years.
Yeah.
Cities do need to grow with plans in place that look ahead decades and decades for obvious reasons.
100%.
But the political cycle doesn't work like that.
No.
Politicians want to understand how they can win the next election, how they can turn the tide in different
Make
cities.
people happy while they're around. I think
it was Jim in the chat right now that said, you know, if it was a mayor in Calgary that Danielle Smith liked a little bit more, this would be an entirely different conversation. I mean, I don't know, maybe. The UCP lost the election in Calgary. If you look at the number of seats, I mean, they won the election writ large, but the NDP won Calgary by the numbers, which I'm not sure that everybody expected. And some folks are wondering, can Ed Nenshi do that same thing? Can he continue that trend? Or maybe does his track record as Calgary's mayor, you know, they'll try to portray him as a tax and spend mayor. UCP, by the way, big budgets. Obviously, as fall session, we look forward to this kicking off in just a few days from now, and keep it on Real Talk for our coverage there. This is going to be a really interesting session. This is the NDP's first with Naheed Nenshi as its leader. Now, he doesn't have a seat in the legislature, but he'll be working hard to stay in front of the cameras and get that messaging out. But it'll be interesting to see how Danielle Smith manages this, what she does, the tit for tat with Edmonton. You know, if they're making money available, hundreds of millions of dollars, about $300 million in Calgary. In Edmonton, the mayor, council going, we've got real issues here. What's the UCP's plan for investing in Edmonton? And then you've got this Bill 20, which will soon become law, right?
Yeah.
It passed final reading in the legislature. It's soon going to become law. And among many other things, like we talked about in our episode, our most recent episode, which would have been the 22nd of October, you can check that out. There's major implications, including the possibility for the premier and cabinet to actually fire mayors and city councilors to reverse bylaws, municipal bylaws that have been enacted, really without any transparency, without giving the public any reason to do so. Now, that would be a remarkable situation, but it has happened before. It's not unprecedented. The province has had in past the opportunity, the green light, the mandate, so to speak, if it deemed itself necessary, to blow up councils, to fire elected officials. When Danielle Smith was on the Calgary Board of Education as a trustee, that happened. That was basically blown up by the education minister then. Ask folks in Chestermere outside Calgary. They've seen that happen as well. But could this get to a point? I mean, it would be a real gutsy move by the premier. It would be hugely unpopular, and it's without a doubt undemocratic. But what a move it would be if the premier and cabinet were to remove a duly elected mayor that they didn't see eye to eye with in Alberta.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of things about Bill 20, they don't just bother me. I'm sure they bother a lot of people. I mean, the majority of Albertans said, we don't care about this. We don't need this. Yesterday, I mentioned something, and I didn't really know what I was talking about Mayor Sohi being in an interview yesterday morning, and I said something about double the money or double that. I went back and went to the archives of his interview. He actually said another thing that I wasn't aware of. So if two candidates are running for mayor, one's independent and one's towing a party line, the one towing the party line, he said on the air, and I couldn't find it anywhere in the stuff written up about the bill, but it was amazing to me that he said it, if it's true, is that the candidate towing the party line can spend twice as much as the independent candidate can on campaign costs, which is another thing that I think is just, I think this is tipping the scales unfairly, especially, I mean, we all know who the lefties and righties are. You said that yesterday, but we all know that we're in a conservative province. So I feel like the conservative candidates, the conservative people in City Hall are going to have the leg up here because of Bill 20.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it depends who's going to organize the best, right? That's ultimately what it's going to come down to. Who's going to organize the best?
Or maybe I'm
who's gonna
wrong because we're
fundraise the best.
downtown. That's always orange. So who knows?
I wanted to also recognize, I saw Justin in our chat kind of making, in a way, a bit of a recurring point, and he doesn't necessarily agree that the ICE district in Edmonton, that the downtown arena district has kick-started development down there outside of ICE district. And I do want to give a fair assessment, a fair analysis, because I said nobody wants to walk outside the old Coliseum, Rexall Place. Nobody wants to walk outside of there after a game. And Justin says, well, nobody really wants to walk outside Rogers Place either after games.
I disagree.
Well, I would say that Edmonton's downtown is not without its struggles, to put it lightly. I just had my car badly vandalized just a couple of nights ago. You probably wondered if I was going to bring that up, but I hope whoever did that got their yayas out, because boy, they left a wake of destruction with my vehicle. But Edmonton downtown still does struggle, but you cannot argue that $2+ billion of development permits issued over a certain number of city blocks has not been a shot in the arm for the city. Now, I saw some of you saying, yeah, but what about the what about the development north of ICE district? So you're talking 2, 3, 4 blocks north of our studio right now. Yeah, obviously it's staged development right now. Nothing's happening right now. It's stalling out, and that's undeniable. But there are population forecasts. I mean, I was really honored to host BOMA Edmonton's Brokers Forum yesterday, this lunch, and you've got industry experts, in particular in commercial real estate, coming at it from 4 or 5 different angles and talking about the future of downtown Edmonton and the bold predictions they had. They're expecting 50,000 post-secondary students are going to be traveling into the downtown core, many of them living in the downtown core every single day. You're not going to be able to accommodate that. It's not going to happen without new towers going up, more affordable housing initiatives, probably some commercial building, condo conversions, right? Because obviously vacancy rates are higher than commercial real estate operators would prefer, and in large part that's due to COVID. But the downtowns are evolving. The downtowns are changing, and I think it's disingenuous to suggest that ICE District has not done a lot to instill confidence in investing in downtown. But I do take points from folks like Justin who are correct. There are still some areas in Edmonton's downtown that are eyesore-ish,
100%,
that are problematic, where people don't feel safe. That's undeniable.
But we work downtown every day. Number one, about the safety thing, I'll say that, I grew up just outside Toronto. I spent a lot of time downtown Toronto, late 90s, early 2000s. I feel safer in Edmonton today than I did then. So I think we have a generally safe city. We have the same problems that every major city has with addiction and homeless and all that stuff, and crime and your car and etc. That happens in every major city. But for the most part, I'm a guy who's downtown every weekend till 2:33 a.m., walking to my car alone. And again, this is from the perspective of a male. I get that that's different than from a woman or a family walking there with kids, but I feel generally safe. Number two, man, come on. You can't argue that, and I'll just name some of the businesses. We're not promoting them, but in and around ICE District, Banquet, the Brew House. Yesterday we're at Joey's. It's packed at lunch. You can't tell me that the arena didn't contribute to that. I mean, we went to No Effects at the fan park the other day. There's tons of things generating income and having people come downtown and spend money that are directly linked to the arena. The one thing I will say is these towers that they built, where they thought people would just live right downtown and pay top dollar for, that's the one thing that I think was kind of the miss. We know a lot of them are still have a lot of vacancy, right?
Yeah, you're talking about Legends Tower and the
all
like.
the new ones.
Awesome to see Rinks Around the League in the chat. That's Jeff Nasher, of course, who's been on the show before. Give him a follow on YouTube. He says if you look at the numbers of all the other Canadian arenas, they're all privately funded, and in Canada's richest province, it shouldn't be any different. Jim checking in says the city owning the land in the arena is actually a liability. Which is an interesting take. Probably not a liability right now as it's leased out, but Jim, could be an interesting point to be argued. More from the live chat in just a quick second, but listen, frankly, this show doesn't happen without amazing partners like the family-owned Friesen Brothers, which is Alberta-grown and Alberta-owned in 17 different locations. I do not have an announcement to make for our Calgary audience members, but let me just say, I wonder if a Friesen Brothers might open in Calgary before the new arena. I mean, I'm just wondering. I'm just a civilian that's just wondering. Right now, for the rest of you in the 17 different Alberta communities that are lucky enough to have a Friesen Brothers there, I want to let you know the Pick 5 for $25 sale is back. This week, every customer can choose from more than 50 different cuts of meat. You can mix and match any 5 packs for just $25. You can find more information on their weekly flyer at friesen.com. At California Closets, they are literally, and I'm saying literally, the best at what they do, the best in the business when it comes to custom closets and storage solutions for the whole home. Look at Stuart Skinner, the Edmonton Oilers star goaltender. Oh, a bit of a heartbreaker last night, but still Stu trusted California Closets with his closet install, and boy, did they do a beautiful job. You can see the evidence of it on Hockey Night in Canada broadcasts. If you want your own project kick-started on your budget, in your time frame, and guaranteed for life, request that free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Our friends at Athabasca University want to remind you they are Canada's open university, which means fall doesn't have to be back to school if that doesn't work for you. It could be spring, it could be winter, it could be summer. World-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. Pretty awesome. At the beginning of September, AU's Board of Governors approving a 10% tuition reduction for First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students across the country. You can learn more at athabascau.ca/indigenous. Now, if you're a graduate, you've just got your ticket, maybe you're a certified electrician and you're looking for work, or maybe you're still at the apprentice stage, but you'd like to get a leg up on the competition, get into that job market, check out the careers link at kubienergy.ca. They're growing clean energy in Canada, and they're staffing up in their Lethbridge, Calgary, Edmonton, and Kamloops locations. Check out their work. Get in touch with their hiring team, their HR team, by visiting the careers link at kubienergy.ca. And as we mentioned, Jasper, we want to recognize the team at Complete Care Restoration. They've got multiple teams deployed to the mountain park, helping business owners and residents get back on their feet after that wildfire. Heck, they're still working in northern communities in other parts of the province, helping those folks get back to normal. Restoring property, rebuilding peace of mind is what they do. They've got more than a quarter century of experience. If disaster strikes, remember Complete Care Restoration. Kind of interesting, that idea of owning the land and owning an arena being a liability over time. I would say that maybe owning the arena could be a liability. People right now are talking about the cost to demolish the Coliseum in Edmonton. The cost, that the city's looking at is a bit of an issue right now to get that area to where it could be appealing to developers and ready for a reinvestment in that part of town. The land itself, obviously, I don't think you have that as a liability, but the building for sure, right?
Yeah.
Ken said, let Murray Edwards, the owner of the Flames, get a loan. You can't tell me that Edwards wouldn't be able to find a bank or an investment fund that wouldn't lend him a boatload of money with relatively low interest. I don't know. I think that those guys can typically operate how they see fit, but billionaires become billionaires for a reason. Stepping on people, getting the best deals, squeezing blood out of stones.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's not like everybody that the public funds that made the Edmonton Arena possible meant that everybody could attend an Oilers playoff game for $49.99. Right?
At all.
I mean, like, the ticket prices that people are paying are unbelievable. That's maybe an entirely different conversation.
I will say, though, also, when you get a new arena, other things come with that. Like, we're talking about Fan Park and Ice District and the towers, but now even it's like I'm not going to say trickle down. That's the wrong word. But it's the expanding effect. Now we're getting, because we've seen the success of Rogers Place, and I will call it a success, even if it wasn't the success you thought it would be, that totally 100% transformed downtown. But now we've got, Coronation Park and the rec center that's coming now soon, because they want to have another place to do events and track and swimming and all that stuff. So I think a new arena is needed for Calgary, but man, it was hard to argue with Peter. He was very, very well versed in the reasons why, especially when he said, we've had pretty much the same number of concerts and revenue that Edmonton has with their new arena and our old one. That astonished me when he said that. I'll have to look that up after the show. But also, maybe they want to beat Edmonton. A new arena, hey, maybe you could have twice as much revenue. If you had a brand new state-of-the-art arena, you could beat us, right?
Yeah, this all, as we talk about this, and I love your enthusiasm, it does remind me of the Simpsons episode, like monorail. And we're gonna have a state-of-the-art, world-class arena. I hope so. Yeah. Super Chat Ken tossing $5 at us. Ken, we sure appreciate that. He says, I encourage everyone, and Peter referenced this as well on the show today, to at least read Power Play, Professional Hockey and the Politics of Urban Development, to at least understand the process, he says. And then that's a book that you can find wherever you find your good books. Again, that's Power Play, the book that Ken is recommending. Justin says, I'm all for civic pride, but I don't enjoy looking at a big arena that I'm paying for with taxes, and then I still have to break the bank to go to attend an event if I can even afford tickets to begin with. I understand that people feel, like 100% understand that people feel priced out of almost anything that happens at Rogers Place, for sure.
Yeah, but there's affordable things that happen there as well. And there's things I like. I don't like how some of the buildings around Rogers Place were and I think you know the one I'm talking about, were demolished or pushed aside, or some of them are like older buildings. But I do recognize the benefit of places like Fan Park and Ice District, where you can have separate events that aren't as big and be outside. And you know, when we were at NoFX, we were looking up. I at one point I said, "Look behind you here!" Like 5-10 years ago, could you imagine this? These huge towers, people outside in the nice weather, you know, in a beer gardens, watching a concert from all that you guys. I mean, you didn't even need tickets for that show, Ryan. You could have watched it on the corner from your apartment if you owned one of those condos.
When you say, I think that I know what building you're talking about, are you talking about Boyle Street?
Of course.
Is that what you're talking about? And I did see people making, and we never want to like gloss over it. We want to like talk about all the tough stuff. We want to talk about the like warts and all, to have those conversations. Like, it is true that I think that the Cates Group, and in particular Edmonton owners Daryl Cates, has operated in bad faith.
They got the shaft.
With this,
yeah.
He's fucked them with this organization that does incredibly important work with people experiencing homelessness and mental health and addiction. And I mean, I don't know that people are aware that many of the Boyle Street managers and some of the programs that are happen above us right now on the third floor of Mercer Warehouse, because they were desperate for office space as they were displaced and then screwed over by the Cates Group. And the Cates Group now, I mean, launching a legal battle with them back in February. It's over $5 million. It is unbelievable to me, optically and otherwise, that a billionaire owner that the city has given so much to, and that has invested in the city as well, yes, but that he's willing to risk the reputation of the hockey team, risk his own reputation over $5 measly million. It's really unbelievable. And a shout out to everybody at the Boyle Street. And by the way, as well, like him or not, the federal Liberal government has come in and saved that project to introduce funding for, is it called the King Thunderbird Center or something like that off the top of my head, that they're looking to build. That would not have been possible without the federal government stepping in, where the local sports team basically hung him out to dry. And that demands and deserves to be said, for sure.
And I'm glad you brought it up, because, you know, people like Cates and other people, they deserve to, we can talk good about the arena, and then we can talk about the bad too. You know, I still work alongside the Oilers for some other things, but this was the one thing where I was like, this, and we're talking about vibes. I was like, when that building, when people moved over here, and I see them every morning going up to the third floor, and I know that like the space they're working in above us is not adequate for what they need to do to help people. It makes me sad.
Yeah. I will acknowledge that a lot of you, including Kathy, are in here saying that none of us need to be convinced on the merits of a new arena. That the question is who's paying for it. And that is the crux of the issue. I don't think, if I'll give like 30 seconds to hear somebody out on why Rexall Place in Edmonton or why the Saddle Dome in Calgary should be renovated. I'll hear out the argument, but I absolutely disagree. I think it's a huge waste of money, in particular in Edmonton. But I do agree that these things need to be discussed, need to be talked about, right? Awesome to see Amos in the chat. Amos is a renowned and very skilled designer. I love when the smartest people I know are tuned into the show. Amos says, I think we have a downtown investment plan that could use a little funding. This was rolled out by a number of groups, including BOMA, including the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, and others, Downtown Business Association,
just talks about
a couple of days
show,
ago. And they're looking for basically almost $500 million to be invested in Edmonton's downtown. I saw that Jeffrey Henson Jason Carlson, who's the founder of TAP YEG, that small C conservative municipal political party, was quite critical of that downtown investment plan, saying that he is concerned that it could put downtown at odds with the rest of the city, with other districts, neighborhoods, and other areas that are also looking for some significant investments. So, that's an interesting angle to take.
I see that point, but we know there are holes downtown still, Ryan. I mean, one of them is the mall. I mean, if you've been to the mall, I just went there to the movie theater for an event the other day for a film festival, and that was great. But I mean, there's just a big indoor area. You were talking about the Holt Renfrew a couple of weeks ago about how when it left, that was kind of the signal that like, oh my gosh, this. So there are still holes downtown that still need investment, still need to be revamped, still need to be made better for the public, and just figure out how we can make them profitable and good areas for people to hang out in or businesses to start in. Because that mall,
yeah. I want to also note that some of you are, we've got other, if you ever want to just sort of be in the most engaged political chat in the province and probably in Western Canada, make sure you join us live weekdays at 8:30 Mountain Time, 10:30 Eastern, where we're streaming on YouTube, and a lot of you are talking about some of the other stories that are happening, maybe even outside of the headlines. One of those is a controversial Calgary councillor, Sean Chu, former, and a current disgraced former Calgary police officer, has been allowed council voting 13-2 in favor of next year's deputy mayor roster, which will see the controversial councillor serve in the role through the month of February 2025, which also coincides with Family Day. So Sean Chu will be the deputy mayor of Calgary in that role during Family Day. I think I might have just puked in my mouth a little bit. I see some of you saying on the chat, including Justin, that if the UCP under Bill 20 doesn't immediately remove Sean Chu from Calgary Council, we know exactly what this legislation was added for. I hate to say it, but I doubt they're going to do it. I do think they should do it, but I think we all know why they won't do it. And I think that's obviously a story that we'll continue to pay attention to. I want to put a couple of things on your radar as we wrap. Coming up on our next episode of Real Talk, so I'm talking the 24th of October. You know him from the Jasper local. He lives there. He works there. He's raising his family there. Bob Covey did not love our conversation with the professional foresters about that Jasper wildfire. He's going to show up on the show and tell us why. And on Friday, our Real Talk Roundtable with Cameron Davies, former Big Kenny guy, not anymore, and Thomas Lukazik, former Deputy Premier, are going to talk about that leadership review. We hope you'll join us then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.